cult of the leader who promises national restoration in the face of supposed humiliation brought on by leftists, liberals, elites, minorities, social justice movements. He promises to restore the nation, but the nation he promises to restore is something the scholar of Nazism, Jeffrey Herf, calls reactionary modernism. It's a glorious technological future where the military is the most powerful in the world. The Nazis loved rocket technology. The V-2 rocket was this symbol of Nazi power and might. That's what's hilarious about the video, is that for those of us who know history, it's a direct reference to the kind of obsession with rocket technology that National Socialism had. As
Republican National Convention, he is nominated as the Republican Party's candidate for president. Although criticized from the left and feared by most Jewish Americans, Lindbergh musters a strong tide of popular support from the South and the Midwest and is endorsed by conservative Rabbi Lionel Bengelsdorf of Newark. Lindbergh wins the 1940 election over incumbent President Franklin Roosevelt in a landslide under the slogan, "Vote for Lindbergh, or vote for war." Montana Senator Burton K. Wheeler is Lindbergh's vice president, and Lindbergh nominates Henry Ford as Secretary of the Interior. With Lindbergh now in the White House, the Roth family begins to feel like outsiders in American society. Lindbergh's first act is to sign a treaty with Nazi Germany and Hitler that promises that the United States will not interfere with German expansion in Europe, known as the Iceland Understanding, and another with Imperial Japan that promises non-interference with Japanese expansion in Asia, known as the Hawaii Understanding. The new presidency begins to take a toll on Philip's family. Philip's cousin Alvin joins the Canadian Army to fight in Europe. He loses his leg in combat and comes home with his ideals destroyed. He leaves the family and becomes a racketeer in Philadelphia. A new government program, the Office of American Absorption (OAA), begins to take Jewish boys to spend a period of time living with exchange families in the South and Midwest to Americanize them. Philip's older brother is one of the boys selected, and after spending time on a farm in Kentucky under the OAA's Just Folks scheme, he comes home showing contempt for his family, calling them ghetto Jews. Philip's aunt, Evelyn Finkel, marries Rabbi Bengelsdorf and becomes a frequent guest of the Lindbergh White House. Her attendance of a state dinner party for German Foreign Minister Joachim von Ribbentrop causes further strain in the family. A new version of the Homestead Act of 1862, called Homestead 42, is instituted to relocate entire Jewish families to the western and southern United States. Many of Philip's Newark neighbors move to Canada. Philip's shy and innocent school friend, Selden Wishnow, an only child, is moved to tiny Danville, Kentucky, with his widowed mother, Selma. In protest against the new act, the radio personality Walter Winchell openly criticizes the Lindbergh administration on his nationwide Sunday night broadcast from New York and is fired by his sponsor. Winchell then decides to run for president in 1944 and begins a speaking tour. His candidacy causes anger and anti-Semitic rioting in the South and the Midwest, and mobs begin targeting him. While addressing an open-air political rally in Louisville, Kentucky, on October 5, 1942, Winchell is shot to death. Winchell's funeral in New York City is presided over by Mayor Fiorello LaGuardia, who praises Winchell for his opposition to fascism and pointedly criticizes Lindbergh for his silence over the riots and Winchell's assassination. As he is returning from delivering a speech in Louisville on October 7, 1942, Lindbergh's plane goes missing. Ground searchers turn up no results, and Vice President Wheeler assumes the presidency. German state radio discloses evidence that Lindbergh's disappearance and the kidnapping of his son were part of a Jewish conspiracy to take control of the U.S. government. The announcement incites further anti-Semitic rioting. Wheeler and Ford, acting on the Nazis' evidence, begin arresting prominent Jewish citizens, including Henry Morgenthau Jr., Herbert Lehman, and Bernard Baruch, as well as Mayor LaGuardia and Rabbi Bengelsdorf. Selden calls the Roths when his mother does not come home from work. They later discover that Selden's mother was killed by Ku Klux Klan members who beat and robbed her before setting fire to her car with her in it. The Roths eventually call Sandy's exchange family in Kentucky and have them keep Selden safe until Philip's father and brother drive there and bring him back to Newark. Months later, Selden is taken in by his mother's sister. The rioting stops when First Lady Anne Morrow Lindbergh makes a statement that asks for the country to stop the violence and move forward. With the search for President Lindbergh called off, former President Roosevelt runs as an emergency presidential candidate in November 1942 and is re-elected. Months later, the Japanese attack Pearl Harbor, and the U.S. enters the war. Aunt Evelyn recounts a theory of Lindbergh's disappearance, the source for which is First Lady Lindbergh, who disclosed the details to Evelyn's husband, Rabbi Bengelsdorf. Shortly before she was forcibly removed from the White House and held prisoner in the psychiatric ward at Walter Reed Army Hospital. According to Evelyn, after the Lindbergh's son, Charles, was kidnapped in 1932, his murder was faked, and he was then raised in Germany by the Nazis as a Hitler Youth member. The Nazis' price for the boy's life was Lindbergh's full cooperation with the Nazi-organized presidential campaign by which they hoped to bring the final solution to the U.S. When Lindbergh informed him that the U.S. would never permit such a thing, he was kidnapped, and the Jewish conspiracy theory was put forward in hopes of turning the U.S. further against its Jewish population. Philip admits that Evelyn's theory is the most far-fetched and unbelievable explanation for Lindbergh's disappearance, but not necessarily the least convincing. Inspiration. Roth stated that the idea for the novel came to him while he was reading the unpublished galleys for Arthur Schlesinger Jr.'s autobiography, in which Schlesinger makes a comment that some of the
the rewards of government, while the people have borne the cost. The establishment protected itself, but not the citizens of our country. That all changes starting right here and right now.